In 100 days, 800,000 lives were lost. The UN was there. The world knew, and nobody stopped it. This is the story of Rwanda, the tragedy the world ignored. The year is 1994, in a small, landlocked nation in the heart of Africa. The world watches as one of the most efficient mass killings in modern history unfolds. This wasn't a hidden event. It wasn't a secret war fought in the shadows. The international community had observers on the ground. The reports were filed. The warnings were sent. But the world turned away. To understand how this happened, you have to look deeper. Not at the 100 days of slaughter, but at the decades of poison that led to it. This is not a story of ancient hatreds. This is a story of an identity forged, twisted, and weaponized. This is history uncovered. Before the first European foot ever touched Rwandan soil, the land was inhabited by three groups: the Hutu, the Tutsi, the Twa. They lived on the same hills. They spoke the same language, Kinyarwanda. They prayed to the same god, Imana. Their identities were fluid, defined not by bloodline, but by occupation. A Hutu who acquired enough cattle could, over time, become a Tutsi. A Tutsi who lost his wealth could become a Hutu. The lines were blurred. They were one people, living under a single monarchy. The Twa were a small minority, distinct in their forest-dwelling lifestyle, but they were all fundamentally Rwandan. The system was complex. It had its own hierarchies, its own politics, but it was their system. Then, the world changed. In the late 19th century, Germany arrived. After World War I, control was handed to Belgium. This is where the story takes its dark turn. The Belgians did not see a complex society. They saw a primitive one, in need of order. And to create order, they needed to classify. They became obsessed with ethnic science. They measured noses. They measured skulls. They measured height. They looked for differences where, for centuries, there had been none of rigid significance. Took the fluid social classes of Hutu and Tutsi and hardened them into rigid, inescapable racial categories. The Tutsi, often taller and with more aquiline features, were deemed superior. Closer to Europeans, more fit to rule. In 1933, the system was codified. Identity cards were issued to every man, woman, and child. On them, a single word was stamped: Hutu, Tutsi, Twa. Your fate was sealed at birth. The Belgians empowered the Tutsi minority, giving them access to education, to power, to privilege. The Hutu majority was relegated to second-class status, forced into labor. A new social pyramid was built, not on wealth or occupation, but on a label invented by outsiders. For decades, resentment simmered. Poison was seeping into the soil of the nation, drop by drop. The sense of shared identity began to erode, replaced by a feeling of us and them. By the late 1950s, the tide of colonialism was receding across Africa. Independence was on the horizon. The Belgians, seeing the political winds change, abruptly switched their allegiance. They began to support the Hutu majority. The carefully constructed hierarchy they had built was about to collapse. In 1959, the simmering tensions exploded. The Hutu peasant revolution swept the country. Thousands of Tutsi were killed. More than 100,000 fled into exile in neighboring countries like Uganda, Burundi, and Congo. In 1962, Rwanda gained its independence. Power was officially transferred to the Hutu majority, but the cycle of violence was far from over. Anti-Tutsi purges erupted again in 1963 and again in 1973. With each wave of violence, more Tutsi fled. In the refugee camps of Uganda, a new generation was born. They were children of exile. They had never seen their homeland, but they heard the stories. They dreamt of the green hills of Rwanda. They were a people without a country, and they grew up with a single burning desire to return home. That desire would soon ignite a fire. The year is 1990. The children of the exiles are now adults. They are soldiers hardened by years in foreign armies. They form a new organization, a disciplined, motivated fighting force. They call themselves the Rwandan Patriotic Front, the RPF. On October 1st, 1990, they crossed the border from Uganda into Rwanda. Their goal, to force the government to allow their return and end the ethnic persecution. The Rwandan Civil War has begun. The government in the capital, Kigali, led by President Juvenal Habyarimana, is shaken. The RPF is a formidable opponent. The conflict becomes a brutal stalemate, dragging on for years. But the war is not just being fought on the battlefield, it's being fought in the minds of the people. Inside Rwanda, a dangerous ideology is taking root. Hutu extremists within the government see the RPF not as a political opposition, but as an existential threat. They don't see them as returning Rwandans. They see them as Tutsi invaders coming to reclaim their lost power. They begin to organize. They form militias. They create a youth wing known as the Interham, which translates to those who work together. And they weaponize the most powerful tool of all, the radio. In 1993, a new station begins broadcasting. Radio television, Libre des Mille Callings, RTLM. It plays popular music. It has charismatic hosts, but beneath the surface, it pumps out a steady stream of venom. The radio becomes a voice of fear. It portrays every Tutsi as a secret accomplice of the RPF. It calls them Inyenzi cockroaches, an infestation to be cleared. The propaganda is relentless. It dehumanizes an entire segment of the population, day after day. It tells ordinary Hutus that their Tutsi neighbors, the people they have lived with for generations, are their enemies, that they are plotting to kill them. It creates a climate of extreme paranoia. The seeds of hatred, planted decades ago by the Belgians, are now being watered with lies. And while the airwaves are filled with poison, a more sinister preparation is happening in secret. Lists are being drawn up. The names of prominent Tutsi and even moderate Hutu who oppose the extremists are being quietly compiled. Across the country, local officials are given instructions. Weapons are distributed. Not just guns, but simple agricultural tools. Machetes, hundreds of thousands of them are imported. They are stockpiled in villages, in towns, in every corner of the nation. The machinery of death is being assembled in plain sight. Yet, on the surface, there is a glimmer of hope. The international community, alarmed by the civil war, brokers a peace deal. In August 1993, the Rwandan government and the RPF signed the Arusha Accords. The agreement outlines a power-sharing government. It promises the safe return of refugees. To oversee the fragile peace, the United Nations sends a small peacekeeping force, UNAMIR. For a moment, it looks like a breakthrough. The war is over. Peace is at hand. The world breathes a collective sigh of relief, but it is a facade. The extremists in the government have no intention of honoring the accords. For them, peace is a threat. Sharing power is surrender. They see the arrival of peacekeepers not as a promise of stability, but as an obstacle to their final solution. The plan is already in motion. The infrastructure is in place. The ideology has taken hold. Everything is ready. They are just waiting for a signal, a trigger. The world believed peace was coming, but behind closed doors, names were on lists. Weapons were in position. What happened next would shock the world. The story continues in Part 2. On April 6, 1994, a plane carrying Rwanda's president did not reach its destination. Within hours, the nation changed. Within weeks, the world would witness one of the most significant humanitarian events of the 20th century. That evening, the presidential aircraft went down near Kigali International Airport. Everyone on board was killed, including President Juvenal Habyarimana of Rwanda and President Cyprien Ntaryamira of Burundi. no one claimed responsibility for the attack. To this day, the origin of the missile remains disputed, but the consequences were immediate and absolute. Within hours, barriers appeared on roads across the capital and then the country. They were staffed by soldiers and civilian militias known as the Interahamwe. Identity cards were checked at every barrier. These cards carried an ethnic classification, Hutu or Tutsi. For those with Hutu identification, the barriers meant passage. For those identified as Tutsi, they did not. Uncertainty spread faster than information. Communities that had lived together for generations became divided. Neighbors turned on neighbors. Families were torn apart. The systematic targeting of the Tutsi population began, along with moderate Hutus who opposed the extremist ideology. Thousands sought refuge in churches, schools, and public buildings. These had traditionally been places of sanctuary in times of conflict. But in 1994, this tradition was broken. Instead of providing safety, these locations became concentration points, making it easier for killers to locate and attack large groups of people. Many of the most horrific massacres occurred in these supposed safe havens. A radio station played a central role in orchestrating the events. Radio Television Libre des Mille Collines, or RTLM, broadcast propaganda across the nation. Its tone grew more extreme after the president's plane was shot down. Broadcasts included the names and addresses of individuals to be targeted. Coded language was used to direct actions on the ground. The phrase "cut the tall trees" was a command to kill Tutsis. RTLM's broadcasts removed ambiguity and provided direct instructions to militias across the country. The violence was comprehensive. No group was exempt. Men, women, children, and the elderly were all targets. The speed and scale were unlike anything seen before. Approximately 10,000 people were killed every day. That is more than 400 every hour, nearly 7 every minute. This pace was maintained for 100 consecutive days from April to July 1994. United Nations forces were already present in Rwanda. The mission, known as UNAMIR, was commanded by Canadian Major General Romeo Dallaire. Months before April 6th, Dallaire had warned his superiors at UN headquarters in New York. He sent a series of now famous faxes. They described detailed plans by extremists to exterminate the Tutsi population. He reported on the training of militias and the creation of lists of people to be killed. Dallaire requested permission to conduct raids and seize weapon caches, taking preventive action to disrupt the plan. His requests were denied. UN headquarters instructed him to adhere strictly to his limited mandate of monitoring a peace agreement. He was told not to intervene. Its information was shared with the United States, France, and Belgium, but no action was taken. After the killing began on April 7th, 10 Belgian peacekeepers assigned to protect the moderate prime minister were captured, tortured, and murdered. In response, Belgium withdrew its entire contingent, which was the best equipped force within the UN mission. France organized evacuations, but only for French nationals and certain Rwandan officials. The United States organized evacuations for American citizens. Rwandan citizens were not included in these operations. They were left behind. The UN Security Council then voted to reduce its presence from 2,500 personnel to a skeletal force of just 270 soldiers. General Dallaire and his small contingent remained, but they were powerless to stop the slaughter. They were ordered to be observers. International news networks broadcast footage from Rwanda to the world. Leaders in Washington, Paris, London, and Brussels saw the images. They were aware of the scale of the killing. They held meetings and issued statements condemning the violence, but no intervention was authorized. The international community was slow to label the events as genocide, a term that would have created a legal obligation to act under the 1948 Genocide Convention. For 100 days, the international community observed. It debated semantics and jurisdiction. It chose not to act. The world had the ability to respond. It had the information, provided months in advance by its own commander on the ground. It had the resources. It had military personnel stationed nearby, capable of rapid deployment. But the political will was absent. Memories of a failed intervention in Somalia just months earlier made major powers hesitant to commit troops to another complex African conflict. They chose not to use the resources they had. Millions watched the events unfold on their television screens. Governments released carefully worded statements of concern. And for 100 days, Rwanda was left to face its crisis alone. But this story does not end here. Part 3 reveals how the 100 days came to an end and what followed. This is a story of hope and resilience. Rwanda, a small nation nestled in the heart of East Africa. In the 1990s, it endured one of the most difficult chapters any country could face. But this is not a story about that chapter. This is the story of what came next. It is the story of how one nation, against all odds, chose to rise. By the mid-1990s, Rwanda was ready for profound change. A new leadership emerged, anchored by a powerful vision for unity and reconciliation. The national focus shifted from the shadows of the past to the immense task of rebuilding. People who had fled the country began returning, drawn by the promise of a new beginning. The hum of construction filled the air as roads and vital infrastructure were meticulously repaired. Schools and hospitals, once shuttered, reopened their doors, symbolizing a return to normalcy and care. The government made stability and progress its unwavering priorities. A new chapter for Rwanda was beginning. The international community watched Rwanda's recovery with a mixture of awe and introspection. Many nations and global bodies grappled with questions about their own responses during the crisis of the Itame's leaders. From around the world visited Kigali, offering words of support and witnessing the transformation firsthand. The United Nations began to study Rwanda's unique approach to healing and reconciliation, recognizing its potential as a model for other post-conflict societies. At the heart of this recovery was a commitment to dialogue. Rwanda's model of community-based justice and conversation, known as Gakaka, gained international attention. In villages across the nation, people from different backgrounds came together to talk, to listen, and to understand. Conversations began to replace conflict. Forgiveness became a deeply personal choice, respected whether it was given or withheld. Slowly but surely, the world started to see Rwanda, not through the lens of its tragedy, but through the strength of its people. With a foundation of peace taking hold, Rwanda set ambitious goals for its future. Education was identified as the cornerstone for all progress. The government invested heavily in its schools, and today, primary education is nearly universal, ensuring that the next generation has the tools to build a better world. Simultaneously, technology became a national priority. The capital, Kigali, was methodically transformed into a vibrant hub for innovation and entrepreneurship. Tech startups launched across the country, creating new opportunities and solving local challenges. Attracted by the stable environment and forward-thinking policies, major international companies began opening offices, further cementing Rwanda's status as a modern economic player. Rwanda also became renowned for its remarkable cleanliness. In a bold environmental move, plastic bags were banned nationwide long before it became a global trend. The streets of its cities and towns are kept immaculate, often swept by community members participating in a collective day of service called a muganda. This dedication to improvement extended to public health. Healthcare systems were rebuilt and strengthened, leading to a dramatic increase in wellness across the nation. In just 2 decades, life expectancy in Rwanda nearly doubled, a stunning achievement. Women stepped into leadership roles at historic levels, and today, Rwanda boasts one of the highest rates of female representation in parliament worldwide. As the country stabilized and modernized, tourism began to flourish. Visitors from every corner of the globe now come to see the majestic mountain gorillas in their natural habitat and to experience the energy of its modern, clean cities. For over 20 years, the economy has grown consistently, earning Rwanda the nickname the Singapore of Africa. Yet Rwanda does not forget its past. Memorials are carefully maintained across the country, serving as solemn places of remembrance. Every April, the entire nation pauses for a period of reflection and mourning. Communities gather to remember and honor those who were lost, ensuring their stories are never erased. Young Rwandans learn this difficult history in school not to dwell in sorrow, but to understand the importance of unity so that such events are never repeated. Crucially, remembrance is paired with action. Neighbors who were once divided by unimaginable circumstances now work together, building homes, businesses, and a shared future. In modern Rwanda, unity is not just an official slogan, it is a value practiced daily. The identity of being Rwanda now comes before any other label, a powerful testament to the nation's journey of reconciliation. The nation consciously chose to define itself by its future, not only by its past. Rwanda faced one of history's greatest challenges. The world wondered if recovery was even possible. Rwanda answered that question. It answered with new schools, with modern hospitals, with thriving businesses. It answered with unity. Today, millions of people visit each year to see what Rwanda has built. They find a clean, safe, and innovative nation moving confidently forward. They find a place where progress is visible on every street corner, in every new building, and in the eyes of its people. Rwanda's message to the world is simple and clear. No challenge is too great to overcome. No setback is permanent. The future belongs to those who have the courage to build it. This is Rwanda, rising.